So this is just what happens when you have BMWs. One of them breaks, so then you have to just go borrow another one. Problem is now I want to sell this. I need one of those. I'm going to start this BMW video out the way all good BMW videos start out, by talking about Mercedes. Now, in my limited experience with Mercedes, they seemed like kind of a top-down company. They build the S-Class, and then all of their models beneath that are decontented S-Class derivatives. Now, BMW, I get the impression, especially in this era, that they are the exact opposite. They built the 3 Series, and everything else is a 3 Series, but bigger. 5 Series, big 3 Series. X3, tall 3 Series. X5, American 3 Series. As such, Mercedes seems like a luxury-focused company. Even their base models are just a luxury car, but decontented a bit. Whereas BMW starts with the sports car and then makes it a little bit more luxurious from there. You get into 7 Series and drive it, and it still has some elements of 3 Series sportiness in it. Therefore, it stands to reason that the sportiest 3 Series is the ultimate driving machine. And in my case, this is actually one of my dream cars. Unfortunately, it's not mine. It belongs to some YouTube guy, Tyler Hoover. Link in the description, I guess. He needs some help starting out. One day he'll reach me in subs, probably. But he has graciously loaned me this 3 Series to make this video, because this has long been one of my dream cars. I am a young millennial. I grew up in the early 2000s with games like Need for Speed Most Wanted, and the hero car there is a BMW M3 GTR, and I fell in love with the way that car looks. The straight lines along the edge, the very sensible layout of the front end, the leaf in the grille. Look at it. It's so damn happy. But buying an M3 GTR isn't really possible. And so the E46 M3, as well as a few other cars of the era, the 05 Ford Mustang, the Audi R8, and the Bugatti Veyron, joined together to collectively turn me into a car enthusiast, a hobby which has proceeded to take every dollar I have ever owned. And unfortunately, due to the absolutely ballistic price of these, I probably won't be owning one ever. But at least I get to experience one for the day. I'm not going to waste too much time on the specs here, but it is interesting to talk about how this relates to my car, which is considered one step below the M3. A lot of people love to stroke themselves about how the E46 ZHP is a baby M3, or the 4-door M3, or an M3 Lite. But here's the thing, that car has 235-ish horsepower. This car has 338 horsepower out of a 3.2 liter S52 straight 6 with individual throttle bodies, which is very neat, but it shares almost nothing in common with my car. Other things that this does not have in common with my car are these widened Fender Flares front and back, completely different front and rear subframes, control arms, springs, shocks, sway bars, mounts. The rear subframe is completely different. The trunk floor is different to accommodate the dual exhaust. The mirrors are different, the rear view mirror is different, some aspects of the interior are different. The front bumper has a grin. So there isn't really much that ties this to the base car or even to my ZHP. It's really just kind of a consolation prize parts bin that BMW threw together, and it is excellent. The ZHP is a great car and a huge step up from a non-ZHP 330, but trying to compare it to this is just, I mean, what are you doing? Let's take a look at what really makes this car special. Whew. Behold Bavaria's best in all of its glory, the S52. Now, the have I been calling this an S52 the whole time? This is an S54. I have brain issues. This is the S54 for straight 6 numbers. I'm not good at them, but it develops 338 horsepower, has dual Vanos, individual throttle bodies, which give it some ridiculously crispy throttle, but other than that, fairly normal BMW under here. And this engine makes one of the most interesting sounds of any BMW. In my opinion, one of the best. The best sounding straight 6 that BMW ever made was the S52. S54 sounds like that, but with marbles? It's raspier than an S52, but I kind of like it. Also, I just realized this has a mechanical fan. Usually manual BMWs have automatic fans. I did not realize these had manual ones. Today I learned. But really nothing under here looks like a base 3 Series. The cooling system is laid out completely differently. You've got the cooling tank over here and going places. The airbox is totally different. The oil filter housing is made out of metal. I don't see a single part in here that would fit my car. It's all completely different. What's interesting is there's no strut tower bar. I kind of figured that a car like this would have one, but there you go. These are the best wheels. There's no other qualifiers there. These are the best wheels. No other BMW has had better wheels. I don't care about your M parallels. These are better. It's just facts. Look at that. 4 exhaust pipes. And in order to fit those, they had to get rid of the spare tire well completely. Which means that no, you can't just bolt this onto your 318 Ti and make it work. I mean, I guess you could if you cut out the spare tire well. One area where my car does have a distinct advantage over this is in chassis stiffness, which is kind of interesting. I don't remember the exact numbers, but the E46 convertible is the least stiff chassis, followed by the M3 and the regular coupes. I don't think there's any real difference in stiffness between the M and the non-M, but I could be wrong. And then the next stiffest one is the sedan with the cold weather package, which has folding rear seats. And the stiffest is one spec'd like mine, which is a sedan without the folding rear seats, because then you get an extra stiff, you know, there's a bunch of metal here connecting the box of the chassis and boxing it in, and boxing or something. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I just like cars. And once we get inside the car, it really does look like a 3 Series in here as well. I mean, especially just an E46 coupe, there really aren't a whole lot of difference. We have these nicely bolstered leather sport seats, black piano black trim, and the Harman Kardon sound system. Really the only differences here from my car or any other E46 is just that this is the coupe instead of my sedan. Personally, I prefer the sedan, but they didn't make an E46 sedan for this generation. They did make an E36 sedan, but you know, this is what you get. You've got the business CD for listening to your business music. I guess it'd be podcast today. Auto climate control. You've got the 2 doors here, and then a normal array of buttons here, except this has a sport button, and I'm not entirely sure what the sport button does, but we're just going to leave that pressed because this is, of course, a sports car. And the 6-speed manual transmission. Absolutely lovely gearbox, clicks into gear, very, very nice. And one thing that I really love about the coupes, this is kind of silly, but I just love this feature. I love it. I love goofy motorized stuff like that. And one of the other unique things in the E46 interior that sets it apart from other BMWs is the gauge cluster. Of course, it is E46 specific, but the most important part, that red line, 8,000 screaming RPM out of the 3.2 liter straight six. I love it. And they got rid of the completely useless fuel economy gauge. You know, your miles per gallon just goes doot, 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 doot all day. No, this is something actually useful. They put an oil temperature gauge there. Wonderful. And the other important thing on this particular gauge cluster is the mileage. This just has 77,000 miles as opposed to my broken hoopty over there with 250. Other than that, there's really not a lot to say. This is a very clean and tidy interior. And oh yes, the rearview mirror is different. The E46 M3's got this weird oval thing. Yeah, not much to say there. It is and oval. I'm not quite sure why, but it is. And it's doing a great job of being an oval. So then, the ultimate driving machine, or well, I guess there is the CSL, which was this, but way more race oriented. It had basically no interior carbon fiber roof. It had no floor in the trunk. It was just fiberboard, but that compromises pretty heavily on your ability to daily drive it. So this is what I consider the ultimate driving machine. But what's it like? One of the reasons this is just the ultimate car to me is because of how well it does everything. I mean, I'm just cruising around here, and despite all those special things that I talked about, this is still a 3 Series. It's still a very comfortable, in this case coupe, I almost said sedan, to just drive around in. It is very, very quiet on the highway, and it rides very well, even with all the sport suspension and stuff. It just goes. It's everything that you touch is nice. The seats are very supportive and comfortable. A lot of people prefer the sort of plush seats, but I am all about the supportive, stiff German seats. My E46 is the only car that I can daily without back pain. Wonder if I could get my health insurance to buy me one of these, you know, for my back pain. And what's interesting about this car is the power and the power delivery. 330-something horsepower might not seem like a lot, but that was more than the contemporary Mustang V8 was making. And the way it delivers it is just fantastic. I love this European power delivery that these cars have, and Mercedes and a lot of others. It's not the American big ball of torque, big fist right at the bottom of the rev range. No, this gives you enough at the bottom, and then it just builds and it swells all the way to the 8,000 RPM red line, at which point the car is singing to you and just making your anticipation of that next gear change grow even more. And then you have the world's most wonderful shifter, and you get to play with that in between gears, and it's just a full-on assault of your senses. When you want it to be, because right now I am just sitting here doing 60, and this is just a car, a comfortable car. There's a little bit of road noise. I'm sure these sporty tires don't do it a ton of favors in that regard, but I can just sit and I can just be here and I can just exist in this car. But then when I want to, say, take this off ramp, I get stuck behind 13 other cars, and the steering seems lighter in this car than mine. This does have a different steering rack. This has, I think, the same steering rack that like a normal 3 Series Sport package would have instead of the rack that my ZHP has. But let's just kind of, this Accord is in a hurry for whatever reason. So I shall leave him behind. Oh my gosh, where does it find the grip? Wow. There is no way you can push this on the street. You will die. Oh, the downshift. Oh, the downshift again. Another little off ramp here. This is what we have to do in Wichita. We don't have curvy roads. We just have the occasional off ramp. Wow, very composed. This is a garbage off ramp, but very composed over those bumps. It's just perfect. Inject this into my veins. Heel toe? Oh! I just think it's a really special engine. Just change your oil every 6,000 miles or you're gonna be doing rod bearings. I think BMW wants you to do it every 12,000 miles, which is absolutely insane. Don't do that. I reset the oil gauge on my E46. I was astounded that they thought that was ever going to work. Control set. Now I can just sit here. I want to sell my car immediately. This thing is fantastic. New owner. This is already sold. This is going to the new owner here soon, as soon as the shippers come pick it up. You got a gem of a car. This thing is in excellent mechanical shape. There's not a single rattle or squeak. Everything is tight. This thing's fantastic. I mean, I realize my point of comparison is 250,000 mile non-M car, but what a gem of a car this is. And these are, in general, perfectly straight body panels too. I'm pretty sad about that on mine. I need one real bad. The only consolation prize, and the thing that I probably could make work within the next year, is a Z4M Coupe. My other absolute favorite BMW design visually. Those have the same engine as this, similar weight, less practical, but people seemingly have not yet discovered them. They still go for reasonable prices, whereas these cars, I mean, these are going to be six-figure cars probably within the next year or two, which is obscene. It's a great car, but I don't know if it's six figures good, but it is kind of the last of its kind. After this, the M3 was a V8, and then they were all turbo engines, and none of them had the character of this, and I'm big on that. I get hung up real bad on character and touchy-feely auto journalist terms and all of that, and that's why I really dislike cars like the Nissan GTR or the Golf GTI. They are extremely competent cars, some of the best in their class, and they bore me to absolute tears. I mean, the GTR is not even necessarily a boring car, it doesn't have much soul to it. This is dripping with soul, and I realize how pretentious that sounds, but it is the truth. Everything from that engine note to the way it delivers power to the way it just urges you to do very dangerous and illegal things on off-ramps. I mean, I'm maybe doing 6/10, if that, out here on public roads. And in this car, 6/10 is definitely more than you probably should be doing. Now, does that mean that you can't use it on public roads? It does mean you're wasting a lot of potential. This definitely needs to see a track every now and then, or at least something like the Tail of the Dragon, where you can find a car's limits while not doing triple digits. But like they say, get you a car that can do both. Not only can this do all the track things, but when you don't want to do the track things, you're not compromising on a whole lot here. There's nothing about this that isn't perfectly usable. Of course, you can get these cheaper, but then you're getting either the SMG, which is terrible, or the convertible, which some people prefer, but I personally think is absolutely terrible. The SMG, of course, the exact same manual as this, just automated. I've never driven one of those. I have driven a couple of automated manual cars that aren't BMWs, and I see the appeal. I see how it's a very interesting thing. You know, a very, very specific set of circumstances came about for the SMG transmission to be a thing. And they are kind of quirky and an unusual thing to experience, but it does not stir my soul like this, and I could not care less about how fast a transmission shifts if I'm doing anything other than trying to set a lap time and getting paid for it. I just couldn't care. I'm not about to give up the ability for me to heel toe, like I did there, just so that my shifts are 300 milliseconds or whatever. I'm just not. It's not worth it to me. So you can find them cheaper, but the coupe with the stick, that's just the one you want. So that's it. The E46 M3, one of my dream cars. Unfortunately, now I've got to go give this back to Tyler. But it has been fun. Thanks for watching.